Hi everybody, my name is Kevin Keegan. I'm the General Manager of Oncology at Illumina, and we're at the Illumina Genomics Forum. I'm joined by two special guests today. We've been spending a lot of time at the IGF talking about the patient impact of precision medicine and genomics for oncology, and I want to introduce these two gentlemen. Rob Newsom is a former Navy SEAL, recently the Vice President of Vision and Strategy of the Philadelphia 76ers, and also a prostate cancer survivor. To his right, Brian McCloskey is also a cancer patient, a prostate cancer patient, and founded the Prostate Cancer Lab. Rob, Brian, can you both say a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the rest of the dialogue. Rob?
Hi, I'm Rob Newsom, a 30-year Navy SEAL. I retired in 2018. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2017 and spent a year with surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and then full recovery with negligible PSA for the last 5 years. So that's great. It's kind of like buying the red car and seeing the same red car all over the place. Once you have cancer, people start telling you, hey, that guy had cancer, that guy had cancer. And it was just shocking to see how many teammates and friends were coming down with cancer. And so what we think we've discovered is an incredible incidence of cancer, both in the military, which is higher than in the civilian populace, but a higher concentration of cancer in special operations. So that's Navy SEALs, like my teammates, are Green Berets, Army Rangers, Air Force Special Ops guys, and Marine Special Ops guys who are getting cancer very young, and they're not being diagnosed because they don't fit the profile. And so usually when they're diagnosed, it's late stage 4.
Thanks, Rob. Brian?
Yes.
A few words?
Brian McCloskey. I am the co-founder of the Prostate Cancer Lab. I am a 25-year marketing exec in the IT space, most recently with the largest healthcare staffing firm. And in 2016, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. It was not metastatic at the time. I went through surgery. I thought we got it. Unfortunately, we did not. And since then, I've been through 9 therapies. I've had 2 surgeries now, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, hormone therapy, several different targeted therapies, and so I'm still on my journey. And as I've gone on my journey, I've learned how important it is for diagnostics to be part of my treatment. My background really is in building e-commerce marketing solutions where we're providing personalized experiences for consumers. And that knowledge shaped how I've approached my disease. You can't provide personalized experiences for consumers unless you understand them. And in the same way, you can't treat disease unless you understand it. So I started or co-founded the Prostate Cancer Lab with 2 of my partners, focusing really on diagnostics. How do we get deeper insight into our cancer so that we can find treatments that are going to have a more durable response?
Thanks a ton, both Rob and Brian. Your experiences are so valuable in the context of this forum. You know, we have spent a lot of time the last few days talking about technology, genomics, really cool flow cells, sexy instruments, and oncologists. But your voice and your experience is really at the root of everything that we do here in this forum and also in the genomics industry. Rob, first of all, thank you for your service. Incredible what you've done and what you've done for this country. You talked a little bit about the impact in the veterans group, especially with these special forces teams. I know you've done a lot of work trying to reach into these veterans organizations and active military folks as well. Can you talk about how that process has evolved for you? And what do you think the next thing is really necessary in terms of creating more awareness within the military special forces and also vets?
Right. So I started with just trying to, I had friends at the Special Operations Command in Tampa, Florida, the headquarters of all special operations, and I started pinging them on, hey, what's going on? I reached out to about 40 or so soft special operations veterans support organizations and tried to see what they were doing. There wasn't a lot of activity. There was a general sense we had a problem, but not much movement. So I was able to to coalesce an effort to have a conference last December on cancer and special operations, and we started moving forward incredibly slowly. There's not a sense of urgency because the scope of the problem is not understood. So part of this is solid research that shows that we have a problem. We have a lot of anecdotal data and information that indicates that there's a huge problem, but a lot of people are waiting to see the research. And so Hunter 7 is a great, outstanding foundation nonprofit that is doing some cancer research focused on the military. They're producing some good stuff. So research is obviously incredibly critical. The pillars that we think are very important are testing, early screening and testing, and people knowing their toxic exposures, letting their care providers know what those are, and insisting to get screened for cancer even though you might not fit the normal profile of age or other categories because of toxic exposures. We need to get early testing and screening. Hunter 7 has just started doing the Galleri test for some individuals, and so that's a groundbreaking effort as well.
That's amazing, and you hit on a lot of those elements in terms of not only awareness of the detection, but just the awareness of the risk, right? So with your peer group, unbelievable the impact that cancer has had. You know, Brian, when we think about, for a diagnosed patient, you both experienced pretty crazy experiences in terms of treatment and the ebbs and flows of that disease. Can you talk about, like, once you're in the realm of being a patient, like how does that play out, and how can you help other people understand, like, there is technology like genomics and actionable therapy behind that diagnosis?
It's a great question. So if I look at my cancer journey, I've got a graph that kind of tracks my PSA, which is a biomarker for progression of prostate cancer. And I have 9 key decisions that I've had to make along the way, and they all tie to what is my next treatment. And it's always, a lot of anxiety around what that treatment is. I'm a data guy, so I'm gonna go after the data. And so data is rooted in diagnostics. And so we started the Prostate Cancer Lab really with that foundation, which is how do we get better insight into our cancer? How do we get better DNA-seq data? We've gone into RNA-seq information. We've set up custom analyses on that. And I want to go deeper. And so that started the Prostate Cancer Lab. We recognized that there were other patients that also had shared that same belief. And so we began to integrate more patients into this, all searching for better diagnostics. And as we got into that, we realized that there were service providers that could help us to take our EMR information and our genomic information and then come up with treatments that were custom for each one of us. And so we're like a marketplace that sources from about 4 different service providers that provides treatment options for patients. And then those patients then take those aggregated sets of treatment options to their physician so that they can have a really educated conversation about what their next treatment option is. The second service that we provide is education. So every week we bring in expert panelists that are talking about proteomics and functional testing and adaptive therapy and organoids and pretty high level stuff. So we're not a typical prostate cancer support group. We're really built to provide answers for cancer patients that are at those advanced stages.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I'm going to try to bring these two things together, right? So here we have, by the way, we all live in California, in fact, Southern California, in fact, San Diego. And we have all the resources in the world in this town, right? VA hospitals, Moores Cancer Center, UC San Diego, Illumina, like all kinds of stuff going on. And yet patients are still getting missed in terms of early diagnosis. They're getting late treatment. They're getting missed for broader genomic profiling to identify targeted therapy. You think about who you're addressing with your new initiatives into the VA and Hunter 7 and stuff like that. How do you think about organizations like Brian's, like, can you think about a way to integrate advocacy on a level that Brian's talking about and broader, organizations like American Cancer Society that just presented in our previous panel? How do you integrate that kind of education, awareness, and actionability within the veterans group?
Yeah, it's funny. Special operations are I think awesome at cross-functional teaming and building collaborative efforts. When I worked in Afghanistan for Admiral McCraven, we did an approach called swarming. And the intent was to have everyone with different capabilities, different missions, and different focuses focus on the same thing within their boundaries. And really, I think that's what we're talking about, is to get organizations aware of a problem set and how they can affect it, and then everyone do what they do focused on this problem set. And so I think there's enormous opportunity, especially in San Diego, but across the nation, with really great organizations that are doing amazing stuff. This Genomics conference is so exciting to see what the cutting edge is. To be able to focus that on this problem set of cancer in the military is going to be huge, and I think we're at a tipping point.
Brian, what about you?
So I think about it just from the standpoint of like translational medicine.
Yep.
So how do you bring all this amazing science that's happening in the lab to the bedside? And what I found is that there are a lot of opportunities for that value chain to kind of like fall apart. And so, we have a number of engaged patients. We have amazing relationships with some of these service providers, with research institutions, and then we need a little bit more help to figure out how to take all of this great knowledge and work with our providers who are really time constrained. Average provider provides 20 minutes with their patient. It's not enough time. They need to understand this entire landscape of all of these amazing developments and work with us and work with with these labs and these research institutions to integrate this into the patient care and do it in a safe way. I mean, obviously, do no harm is so important, but a lot of the organizations that we work with, they're CLIA certified. It's really just about knowing about these solutions. And so what we try to do is act as that voice to help to bridge that gap between what's happening in the lab and what's happening at the bedside.
That's great. A couple of threads that have been pulled through this last couple of days. You may have seen the technology presentation yesterday morning, and Alex talked about pulling all these different functional people, engineers and scientists and everything else to figure out these really complex problems. And another one of the speakers on the first day talked about, molecular profiling is something that we've kind of solved technically. What we haven't been able to do is what you two described. Like, how do we pull these organizations, partnerships, and organizations together to drive toward a common, solution? And you talked about the swarming idea in Afghanistan. Like, why don't we take that type of approach in terms of creating better access and awareness in these patient populations? I'd love to get your perspective on that. I mean, you obviously, by the way, I'm a huge fan of Rob, of what you guys did and how you operated in your SEAL teams, and the leadership capability and your collaborative effort in those teams, because of course your life depended on it. So, how can you use that philosophy in the context of organizing around cancer care?
Yeah, what it takes, and the cancer space is a great area to do this. It takes people not being concerned about credit or guarding their equities. And so every organization has to be a little bit more open to collaboration and sharing their insight and their knowledge, and being open to stretching just a little bit outside of what is normal to be able to do that. And war, it created that burning platform to get all of government agencies in Iraq and Afghanistan to work together in a way they never had. And I think cancer, especially cancer in the military, is a great opportunity to pull people together and have a big win for everyone in a more collaborative and open space. So it's there. It takes a lot of coordination and collaboration that people aren't used to, and maybe a little top cover with respect to information flow that takes some significant management.
Yeah, really, really great perspective on that. You know, Brian, when you think about talking to newly diagnosed patients or patients, you know, I've talked to you and folks like Bryce before, like when they get thrust into this situation, you know, the first question is like, what do I do next, right? How do we tell the story on the what do you do next, Brian?
Right. So when you're diagnosed with cancer, you just don't expect it, you know, and every cancer patient deals with it differently. So for me, I was an exec, you know, I focused all of my time on solving problems. This became yet another problem for me to solve where I had absolutely no knowledge of this space. So I think, you know, the first thing is that patients need to grab a hold of this and understand that they must take an active role in their care for many different reasons. If it's not only just to provide them with the satisfaction that they're doing everything that they can to help themselves. And so the patient voice in, you know, rallying everyone together, I think is so important. And not every patient has that voice. Some just don't want to deal with it. And I understand that, right? But for those that do, they represent a core segment that can act with all of these other players, the providers, the researchers, et cetera, to change how medicine is approached. And today, you know, I think I'm beginning to see that there are patients that are out there that think like our patients at the Prostate Cancer Lab, and I know there are a lot more out there. And I think that once you have that critical mass, I think that can really change things. But you don't have to start there. I mean, you can have like a group of, you know, a handful of patients and some of these other constituents to collaborate and really think about this problem differently and to integrate this incredible science. Because we're not leveraging it. We're not, you know. I can go on, you know, what do we do with tissue, for example? You know, most patients don't even think about their tissue. If they get a biopsy or surgery, it goes off into a biobank. There needs to be a strategy for how we even think about how we're going to use that tissue for all of these wonderful tests. And so, you know, again, this is just an opportunity for patients to get really involved in their care. And I think when there's that collaboration, particularly with the provider, I think magic can happen. And I think that the outcomes for patients can be much better than if they're not involved.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I got to tell you, your voices as patients and as advocates are so powerful in this tone. I'm going to switch gears to just a little bit and not talk about cancer, but kind of relate it to cancer. We're all surfers. This is how I met you, and of course, you're a surfer. I surf as a therapeutic tool, right? It you know, kind of normalizes me. Can you talk a little bit about things like surfing or those types of activities, like how it plays out, like in your activity role or related to surfing in general? So, Rob, how about, I know you're relatively new to this, but
Yeah.
I'd love you to hear it.
No, it's, you know, in the veteran space, there's a whole surfing movement. Surfing is therapy related to PTSD or traumatic brain injury or just transition in general. So there's nothing like being out on the ocean, and there's a lot of talk about being present. When you're on a wave, you are nowhere but on that wave, and so it's a great way to center and be present and just connect with yourself and with the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I've surfed for the better part of 30 plus years. I've been involved in many other sports. There's really nothing like being in the ocean. The negative ions, however you want to think about it, or if you're surfing with, you know, I've got family that are involved with surfing and grew up, taught them how to surf. Just the therapeutic benefits, the physical activity of getting in, they help you not only mentally, but even when you're going through treatment, it also helps to stay strong, because you've got to get through that treatment, and then you have to prepare for your next treatment. And it's so, it's like prehab, right? How do you use, physical activity to prepare for that? And surfing is like, I just can't think of a better medium or sport to do that.
Yeah, so my invitation now for both of you is I want to go surf with you two guys, and let's make that happen. But also, we oftentimes I've talked to both of you about the Morse Cancer Center, and of course there's a surfing crowd there. We want to link this whole story with the VA, with Morse Cancer Center, with the Prostate Cancer Lab out in the ocean, and make that happen. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your voices and experiences in this. And thanks for joining the Illumina Genomics Forum. I think these guys represent the real reason why we're here in this forum, and why we're so committed at Illumina in the oncology business. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Brian, so much. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.